and welcome to another episode of the Hardcore Soft Skills Podcast. My name is Yadi Caro, and in each episode, we learn a new skill with the help of an expert. Today, we talk about verbal communications. Don't you feel now that as we mostly engage our lives online, that it is so difficult to communicate verbally? We can be misunderstood. We have to deal with angry customers. We have to deal with pitching our ideas or how to say no to others. Well, you are going to enjoy and learn a lot in this episode because you will hear a how-to for each one of these scenarios from the expert in verbal communications, Sam Horn. Sam Horn is a top speaker, a coach, and the CEO of Intrigue Agency, a branding, positioning, and messaging global company. She is the author of 9 award-winning books, including Got Your Attention and Tongue Fu, one of my personal favorites. Today, you will learn how to become a better communicator and why elevator speeches do not work. Remember to go to my website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. And leave a review. Let's listen. Thank you so much, Sam Horn, for being here with me on the podcast today.
You're welcome. I've been looking forward to sharing some ideas with your listeners and viewers.
Wonderful. So I have so many questions for you because I've been reading your work, and you provide basically an answer to everything that has to do with communication, either that be like a verbal conflict, public speaking, even what to answer when we're like in an awkward networking event. So what I want to do with the interview is throw out some possible scenarios. But before we do that, I want to know more about why did you decide to go ahead and focus your career in communications?
Well, first, thanks for the great question. It's you may know that I helped start and run the Maui Writers Conference. Writers Digest said what can is to the film industry, we were to the publishing industry. And one of the things we did is we did something unprecedented. We gave people an opportunity to jump the chain of command and pitch directly to decision makers. You could pitch your screenplay to Ron Howard. You could pitch your novel to the head of Simon & Schuster. Guess what? No one knew how to pitch. And they would have this opportunity with this decision maker who could give them a deal on the spot. And yet it would be wah, 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 wah. So I decided that we needed to have ways to turn infobesity into intrigue. So we get people's eyebrows up and they want to hear more.
I like that concept of infobesity. Could you explain what that is about for those who haven't heard it?
Well, we all know what it is, don't we? It is like we go to a meeting and it's la 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 la, or we go to a conference and it's one-way communication and it's just TMI and it's complex or it's terminology we don't understand. And as you well know, goldfish. This is research done by Nancy F. Cohen at Harvard. Goldfish have longer attention spans than we do. Goldfish 9 seconds, human beings 8 seconds. So we've got to hit the ground running and make what we say so clear, so concise and compelling that people want to keep listening or keep reading.
So that is indeed a big problem. And I work in tech and going to conferences where they speak big words, do not necessarily connect with customers or get us excited about things. When it comes to, let's say in a particular scenario, what do you think if we wanted to pitch ideas to a small group of people? What is the main problem that people encounter, and what is a key thing that we should do that we don't do?
Okay. I hope people have pen and paper. So unless they're driving, grab some right now. So you can ink it when you think it, because the idea I'm about to share can help you get a yes to your proposal. Can help you get funding for your startup or for your cause. It could help you land a job. So I tell the quick story so we have context, and then I'll reverse engineer this idea so everyone can use it immediately the next time they want to have people at hello. Sound good?
Sounds awesome. Yes, let's go ahead.
Okay. So here's a 90-second story. So I was the pitch coach for Springboard Enterprises. We've helped entrepreneurs get $26 billion with a B in funding valuation. One of my clients, Kathleen Callender, came to me years ago. She said, Sam, I got good news. I got bad news. I said, what's the good news? She said, I've been invited to speak in front of a room full of investors at the Paley Center in New York. I said, that's great news. I said, what's the bad news? She said, I'm going at 2:30 and I only have 10 minutes. She said, you can't say anything in 10 minutes. I said, Kathleen, you don't have 10 minutes. You're going at 2:30. They have heard 16 presentations. You've got 60 seconds. Here's the 60-second opening we came up with. Not only did she win buy-in from those investors and get millions of funding, she was selected Business Week's most promising social entrepreneur for that year. Ready for a 60-second opening?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know there are 1.8 billion vaccinations given every year? Did you know up to a third of them are given with reused needles? Did you know we're spreading and perpetuating the very diseases we're trying to prevent? Imagine if there were a painless, one-use needle for a fraction of the current cost. Don't have to imagine it. We're doing it. Are your eyebrows up?
The eyebrows up, yes.
Now everyone listening, what is something you care about? What is something you want a yes to? What is something you're proposing and you think people are going to be skeptical? What is something you asking and you think they're going to tell you no? Here's what you're going to do. Write down 3 did you knows that go to the problem you're solving, the issue you're addressing, or the need you're meeting. Now, what are 3 did you know questions that go to how much it costs, how long it takes, how the trend is worsening? And if you're thinking, Sam, where do I get startling statistics about this? You Google that stuff. Put into search, what are surprising statistics about blank? The issue that you're, addressing, the problem you're solving, the industry you're working in. Up will come things even you don't know. And if you don't know them, even the most jaded decision maker doesn't know them. And the quickest way to get a cynic's attention is to introduce something they don't know, because now they're smarter than they were before, right? So that's the first step. Second step, use the word imagine, because imagine pulls people out of their preoccupation. Because see, now they're picturing your point. They're seeing what you're saying. Imagine linked with 3 benefits of what it is you're proposing. So go back to Kathleen Callender for a moment. Think about it. What are her decision makers thinking about? Well, they're thinking about those reused needles. So we made it one use. They're thinking about painful inoculations. We made it painless. Most decision makers are thinking about money. We made it a fraction of a current cost. Do you see how in a world of infobesity, we distilled this into one succinct sentence? Who wouldn't want that, right?
Yeah.
Now the third step, say this. You don't have to imagine it. We've created it. We're doing it. And now come in with your precedents and your evidence to show this isn't pie in the sky or speculative. This is a done deal. You're ready to run with it. You do that all in 60 seconds. Everyone else is still telling them what they're going to tell them and then telling them they told them. You just gave yourself a competitive edge.
That is wonderful advice, because it allows us to identify a way to kind of connect with the audience, like the did you knows, and then also being able to create that sense of suspense and providing we have the solution. So I love that. That's great advice. And that would save so many presentations that I've seen and that I'll probably provide myself. In your book, Tong Fu, which I read and I'm rereading as well, I love the concept Tong Fu because it addresses the how to deflect and disarm and diffuse any verbal conflict. So when it comes to particular scenario of in the tech world, for example, us finding with difficult customers that are telling us, hey, this is not ready, or they come with specific needs, what is a key way that we could deflect, or not necessarily deflect, or address some particular difficult customer that will come to us very angry?
What a great question. So once again, ink it when we think it. So draw a vertical line down the center, put on the left words to lose, put on the right words to use. Because if we're dealing with a difficult customer, we may unintentionally be using words that are actually creating a conflict that's causing resentment and resistance. Over on the right, these words create cooperation. They actually create receptivity and rapport. So I'm just going to cut to the chase and give you some words over on the left, right? The word but. Well, I hear what you're saying, but we tried that before. I know I was supposed to get that back to you today, but I'm overwhelmed, but sets up a conflict, doesn't it? How about the words you'll have to? Well, you'll have to talk with Charlie. He's in charge of that project. I can't give you an answer to that. Or you should. Well, you should have brought that up in the staff meeting if you weren't clear about it. So, but, should, you'll have to. Another is can't because. We can't go ahead with that because we haven't signed off on the budget yet. Those words can't because, or there's nothing I can do. I'm not the decision maker. So now let's replace all of those fighting words with friendly words that turn conflict and cooperation. Sound good?
Yeah.
So how about the word instead of but, use the word and. I hear what you're saying. And we tried that before and it didn't work out. And do you have any ideas on how we can prevent that from happening this time, right? You're right. I was supposed to meet with you or was supposed to get that back to you today. And I apologize, it's late. And I've got about a half an hour to wrap up. And then I'll have it on your desk. So, and creates cooperation, but creates conflict. The word should. You should have brought that up in a staff meeting. The word should usually pertains to the past. Do you know anyone who can undo the past? It's a critical word, causes people to lose face. They will resent us, even if what we're saying is right. So over on the right, use the word next time or in the future. So we're a coach instead of a critic. So people learn instead of lose face. From now on, if you have a question like that, please bring it up in the staff meeting because probably other people are wondering the same thing. Now they're learning from that instead of losing face over it, right? How about now? You look a little young. Are you a mom by any chance? Do you have children?
I do. I have 2 boys.
You have 2 boys. What ages are they?
They are 8 and 5.
You're going to love this.
Please tell me.
Look at the words can't because. Because, your boys may say, hey, Mom, can we go out and play with our friends? And we may say, no, you can't. You haven't. Look at your room. You haven't done your chores yet. You can't go outside, So constantly we're telling our kids what they can't do. Guess what? They see us as the big meanie who is keeping them from what it is they want, right? Over on the right, let's put sure you can as soon as, or yes, you can right after. Yes, you can play with your friends right after you do your chores. Yes, you can watch TV as soon as you finish your homework. Now, look who's responsible for getting what it is they want, right? Yeah.
So I love that because it's not changing the statement overall. It's just changing those transition words instead of like, no, you need to clean your room right now. It's like, well, of course, as soon as you X, Y, Z, or with the case of the but and changing it for an and, it's the same statement, but changing that is pretty powerful because when we hear a but, we cannot go past that basically.
See, what you just said, you really are picking up on the nuance of this, of the impact of this, because it's not just semantics, right? We're not just changing words. We're changing the whole dynamic of the interaction. Is that people get angry and upset because it feels like we're telling them no, or it feels like we're telling them what they can't do, or it feels like we're making them wrong. And over on the right, it really does cause people to not kill the messenger and to take a little more responsibility for their behavior instead of just blaming us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, also, I think there was one more. You want one more word?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, it's that word, there's nothing. Especially, with COVID the last couple of years, the quarantine, remote work, hybrid work, etc. It's like, hey, there's nothing I can do about it. I know you don't want to come back into the office, but that's the rule, right? Do you see how those words stack up? It's like, look at the difference where I wish there were more I could do about it. And it's the rule. And there's something we can talk about. Let's talk about how, do you see how the words there's something instead of there's nothing, or I wish instead of there's no way, once again lets people know at least we're doing our best instead of just shrugging them off and saying, not my fault, nothing I can do, no way I can change it.
That I like that creating already fostering kind of an environment of cooperation, even if we're not lying, we're maintaining our stance, but we are just changing the tune of the conversation.
Yes.
And when it comes to saying no to somebody, either it be my kids or it either be a difficult customer, particularly, like what are some keys that we could have in terms of what's a proper way to say no?
Good. Let's once again see, people ask, Sam, how does your brain work? I juxtapose everything because I really do believe it's the quickest way to make complex ideas crystal clear. So once again, let's go over on the left with fighting phrases or words to lose or reactions that make things worse. How can we replace them with responses that help instead of hurt, right? So let's say that a customer is upset with us and maybe they're blaming us for something that's not our fault. Whatever we do, if someone makes a negative accusation, don't deny it. Over on the left, negative accusation, don't deny it. Because if someone says, you women are so emotional, and we say, we're not emotional, now we are.
Exactly.
If someone says, you don't care about your customers, we do too care about our customers. Now we're arguing with our customers. We're proving their point, right?
Yeah.
So over on the left, don't deny a negative accusation. And if people are blaming and shaming, over on the left, put find fault. Over on the right, put find solutions. We actually interrupt it. Maybe we do like a T. Hey, time out. Blaming each other won't help. Or, calling each other names won't undo this. Instead, that's the pattern interrupt, right? And then we say, instead, let's figure out how this happened and how we can prevent it from happening again. Instead, let's reach out to that customer, apologize for what went wrong, let them know we're going to make it wrong so they can trust us with their account. Yeah. John F. Kennedy said, our task is not to fix the blame for the past. It's to fix the course for the future.
Yeah.
You can even say that in the middle of people are getting into it, finger pointing, fault finding. Say, hey, let's fix the course for the future instead of fixing the blame for the past, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice. One of the things I really loved about your work as well, the common advice is that we must have an elevator speech ready to talk about it during networking events or whatever event might be. So what are your views on elevator speeches and what are your recommendations on that?
I'm so glad you brought this up because traditional elevator speeches, I help blank do blank, are eye rollers, right? They're scripted. They're right from the beginning. They're surface conversation. And I'm all for meeting people and having a meaningful two-way conversation instead of this scripted surface conversation. So I'll give you a story and then we'll reverse engineer technique. Sound good?
Yeah.
So I was speaking at Inc. 500. And this program on how to disrupt the traditional elevator speech was the most popular program. And Tim Ferriss, Seth Godin, Tom Peters, Jim Collins, they were all there. So I'm asking people in the audience to give their elevator speech. So here's Colleen, Entrepreneur of the Year for Oklahoma. And I said, so what do you do? Wah, 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 wah. A minute later, no one in that room knew what she did, and she was the CEO. Now, think of the lost opportunity cost. This is Inc. 500. These are the top entrepreneurs in the country. No one's going to walk up to her afterwards and want to partner with her, right? Or recommend her because they don't know what she does. So I said, Colleen, can we play? She said, sure. I said, so what do you do that I can see or smell or taste or touch? And she said something about MRIs and CAT scans. I said, oh, do you run the medical centers that offer MRIs and CAT scans? And she said, yes. I said, don't tell that to people. She said, don't tell that to people. I said, because if someone says, what do you do? And you say, I run the medical centers that offer MRIs and CAT scans, they'll go, oh, that ends the conversation. We don't want to end the conversation. We want to open the conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I said, turn it into a 3-part question. Do you know anyone, could be yourself, a friend, or a family member who's had an MRI or a CAT scan? And she said, what's this about a 3-part question? I said, well, if you say, have you ever had an MRI CAT? That feels a little like an interrogation, right? We're backpedaling this. It's a little bit too intimate.
Yes.
And furthermore, if we haven't, we just came to a conversation cul-de-sac, right? So when we give people options, now they have autonomy where they get to go, and it increases the likelihood they will know someone who's familiar with what we do, right?
Yeah.
So when we say that, we put a sock in it, and they may say, well, I haven't, but my daughter has. She hurt her knee playing soccer. She had an MRI. Guess what? Now we link what we do to what they just said. Oh, I run the medical facilities that offer MRIs like the one your daughter had when she hurt her knee playing soccer. Guess what happens? Oh, look, they see it. They get it. They remember
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it. And we've already had a 2-way conversation in 60 seconds that's mutually meaningful. Beats a traditional, I help blank do blank.
Yeah, keeps it much more interested and creates that engagement with the other person, because networking events are usually very awkward events, and everybody's business cards and kind of the conversation just stops short often. Now, if we wanted to open up a conversation for those of us who are introverts, who have the fear of speaking to others, approaching people, what do you recommend?
Oh, I love this question. You may know that a few years ago, I gave away 95% of what I owned and went off on my year by the water. So I
Oh,
traveled around the
wow.
world to Monet's Garden, swimming with dolphins, sailing. And so I know when you go into a new town, or when you walk into a room full of strangers, 3 words: ask for advice, right? I would say, hey, I've never been to this town before. What do you recommend I see? Or you're at a networking event. Hey, this is my first time here. What do you suggest? Or first at a conference. Hey, I've never been to this conference before. What programs are you going to? Do you recommend? Malcolm Forbes said the way to a man's heart is through his opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
when we ask people for advice, we immediately give them an opportunity to be an expert and to take us under their wing. And right away, we're having, once again, a mutually meaningful conversation instead of talking about the weather.
Yes, and coming up with questions seems like a much easier way, instead of just out of the blue starting to talk about ourselves. So that's a very great advice. Also, and another scenario in terms of the speaking in public when it comes to a big audience. There's the advice of, imagine everybody without clothes or something like that, or rehearsing your message. What do you recommend, or what are a couple of keys for when it comes to public speaking to a big audience?
I am so glad you asked that, because I do not agree with the advice to picture people in their underwear, because that's a top down, right? That's like denigrating the audience, seeing them almost as the enemy. And so we're going to put them down, or we're going to see them as being ridiculous. Here's a story that really shows how I think we can align with the audience and serve the audience and genuinely connect with the audience in a way that's a win for them and for us. So Candy Lightner, you may be familiar, years ago, her daughter was killed by a drunk driver on her way to prom. And Candy spiraled into depression. And a few months later, she realized that wasn't going to bring her daughter back, and that if she were going to honor her daughter, she would try and prevent this from happening to other families. So she started MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And at her very first event, there's like 1,000 people and she didn't sign up for this, right? And she's off in the wings, and her knees are knocking and her palms are sweating. And she turns to her friend and she says, I don't think I can do this. And her friend went over and got her purse and pulled out her keys and said, Candy, if as a result of speaking, one person in that audience decides to turn over their keys instead of driving drunk, will it have been worth it? And so even today, because Candy still does media, etc., she's going to be on the Today Show, right? Millions of people are watching. No, keys, key, right? And I have a mantra that I use when I speak, and my clients use it when they're going to give their TEDx talk or speak at the UN or speak at Davos or South by Southwest. I'm here to serve, not to shine. I'm here to give good, not to look good. I'm here to make a difference, not to make a name. And I think when we center ourselves in what a gift and a blessing and a privilege it is to have a chance to share our story or our lessons learned in a way that they might add value to others, isn't that a blessing? And wouldn't we embrace it and welcome it as opposed to, want to run from the room?
Mm-hmm. Focusing on the message, very powerful. And certainly, and before we go, I need to go back to what you mentioned about the year by the water, because I read about it and following your work. I want to know more about that. Why did you decide to, you mentioned, give away 95% of what you had and go and explore? What made you do that? And what did you learn during that time?
I love your question. So I'll always be grateful to my son, Andrew, because I had just finished a very intensive 2-day consult down in Southern California. And my son called and he sensed something in my voice. And he said, "What's up, Mom?" I said, "Andrew, I'm so exhausted. I don't know if I can get on that plane tonight. I've got to turn in my rental car, fly back to DC, turn around and come back to keynote in San Francisco in a couple of days. I don't know if I can do it." And he paused for a moment and he said, "Mom, there's something about you I don't understand. You're an entrepreneur. You have your own business. You can do anything you want, and you're not taking advantage of it." And I realized he was right. Paulo Coelho said that one day we're going to wake up and there won't be any time left to do the things we've always wanted to do. And so I decided that now was the time for me to do something I'd always wanted to do, which was to travel and be by the water and interview people. I interviewed people around the world and I asked, "Are you happy? And if so, why? And if not, why not?" And what I learned was that the vast majority of people are going to do what they really want someday, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to start their own business someday. They're going to spend more time with their family someday. They're going to travel more someday. They're going to write their book someday. And someday is not a day in the week. And what I learned is to get crystal clear on who and what are important, and then to take responsibility for bringing it into our life now, not someday.
That is absolutely powerful. Thank you so much, Sam, and for the inspiration and for all the key information that you gave to us today. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Well, thank you. Well, if they would like a link to my TEDx talk, both on Intrigue that has the elevator speech and the one on Some Days Not a Day in the Week, they can either email me at sam@samhorn.com, and they can also go to my website, which is samhorn.com. And it's got all my different books and free articles and TEDx talks and things like that. It'd be a joy to hear from people.
Thank you so much for being here with me today.
You're welcome. And thank you.
Thank you for listening today. Before you leave, make sure you go to my website, hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and sign up for my weekly newsletter. Then go to the review tab and leave a review. It is the way to ensure this podcast is discovered by others. Remember that by learning soft skills, you make your hard skills work for you. See you next time.